Welcome back. We're continuing with our conversation this evening on the issue of Kenya urban development and the urban planning that we have in the country and the role of the private sector, as well as where we have dropped the ball as far as urban centers go. My guest is still with me, Joachim Nyarangi from the Institute of Planner Council, a council member and immediate former president, as well as Professor Lawrence Esho, also a member of the Kenya Institute of Planners, as well as the chair of the Built Environment, of the School of Built Environment at Technical University of Kenya. Gentlemen, back to our conversation. Before going for the break, of course, there's the question of Nakuru being the cleanest city. What happened, Joachim?
It is still pretty clean. But as I said, and what Prof had said earlier, so we changed the constitution, and the constitution was very clear. It identified urban areas as special. They need to be managed separately or differently from the counties. So I think I will lost the ball at that. The first 10 years in terms of urban management of our cities went low. Of course, the issue of haphazard and uncontrolled development came up. Capacity issues are again the capacity issues to even collect waste was a challenge, and every day there's more people coming to the city. There's more waste. There's more demand for water. We are still maintaining the same a supply side of things, so yeah. It's bound to go off.
All right, Prof, now, and it's a good thing that Joachim has mentioned this. When you look at social amenities, Nairobi has suffered numerous times in terms of water shortages, power outages, because again, when you look at the population in Nairobi compared to what the plans had in mind at the time of planning, it is not the same. It has grown 100-fold. Have we not adapted, or who needs to adapt first? Is it the government? Is it the people? What needs to come first?
You know, for any city that is attractive and attracts population, that's a benefit to that city. And everyone is looking for the population to increase and for investors to come into their city.
Yeah.
But what has been happening is we've not matched that with a requisite improvement in the infrastructure that can commensurate to that population. Now, and that has been a historical problem. We have not expanded the roads, we have not expanded the sewer systems, yet we are building higher than we ever did. Mm-hmm. If you look at the Kilimani area of Nairobi, for instance, a lot of high-rise buildings are coming up. There has not been an attempt to expand the sewer network. Remember, these were single-dwelling houses before on 1 acre or half an acre.
Yeah.
Relying on septic tanks. Now, if you go there are sections of rivers which actually raw sewage just goes into the river, because there has not been an attempt by the public sector, by government, that is, by county governments, to improve the infrastructure in those areas.
Yeah.
So I think, and yet, county governments on a daily basis are collecting revenue, a lot of revenue, from developers. So if you present your building plans, they'll do a calculation for you and tell you pay this number of millions if you for a permit to be able to develop your building. But then there is no investment in infrastructure to facilitate that growth. So we need to change from a development control, regulation of urban development, to facilitation of urban development.
Yeah.
Of course, we need to do both. We need to control, because if you left to the market will go for its own advantages. But at the same time, we need to look at developers as allies, and we see then how we can facilitate them to do whatever they do better for the benefit of the city.
Now, the big debate in the country right now is the issue of housing, the 3% housing levy. But then the question that no one is actually talking about is, do we have the infrastructure to support these 200,000 units that the government intends to put up? Joachim.
Yes, and that, indeed, that is a question that the planning profession wants to support in that. Housing, as we understand it, it's not just the residential unit. Housing has almost 9 other components in it. So it involves healthcare, where you should look at housing and urbanization as a family, all right? So a family, so where do they sleep? Okay, in the morning, where are the children going to? School. So where is the school? Where is the mother going to? To the market. Where is the market? Where is the dad going to? to work. So where is that vis-a-vis where they're staying? And when they want to relax, where are those spaces? So housing is a whole component. It's not about shelter. And if you look at it as residential only, you will miss on these other components and that. So the conversation and our offer is to bring the people into this solution, because everyone is alive to the fact that 60% of informal settlement and people living in informal settlement is not tenable. All right. So how do we bring the people into this conversation and into this solution? We offer planning, which is participatory. So we go to the communities, to the landowners, to the business communities, to the residents, to the informal settlements, and decide and agree what is our future, what are we going to do, what are our priorities, and we hope that this will now be able to trickle down and inform budgets. It's a funny scenario that our national budget is not based on plans.
Yeah.
On grounded plans. So where, if you're doing healthcare, so where are you going to put these hospitals? And the planning process, a participatory planning process, will be able to give us even our demand in terms of human resource development, because we will know for every 2,000 people we need a doctor, we need a teacher, we need a school, and we're able to now advise on that.
All right, Prof, looking back, you will remember that there's a time that if you are a real estate developer, one of the things that you would need to make provisions for is where is the recreation area?
Yes.
Where are those social amenities, the schools, the markets, the hospitals, or even a clinic? Now we have developers putting up houses and housing units, but do not have provisions for any of that. What changed?
Yes.
Is it a matter of I just need to make profit, or is there somewhere in government that dropped the ball and did not make sure to ensure that these requirements are actually met?
Yes. I will start by returning to your initial questions. Where we are with urban planning, is Kenya properly planned? If you go to the books, if you go to the records and you pick a plan for any town or any settlement or any neighborhood, you will notice that there was adequate provision for these public areas, either children's playground, either a community center here and there, some social amenities here and there. But unfortunately, the 90s were dark ages for planning and urban development and urban management in this country, in the sense that there was a lot of grabbing of those utilities and public purpose plots. Now we have a situation whereby then whatever has remained is really just properties that are owned by individuals. Now, if the municipal council or county government has to invest in a public park within a residential neighborhood, they have to buy back some of these properties. And you know how difficult that will be, because there is a lot, the value of those plots is such that it is just prohibitive to be able to buy back. Something else, we no longer have the large parcels we used to have.
Yeah.
So if you tell somebody to contribute a certain percentage of their plot for development of an urban public purpose, it becomes difficult, because if I'm going to give up 20% of my 50 by 100 plot, how many other plots do you need to contribute to be able to build a school for that area? So the only option now left for us is to buy back some of these plots, so that we have a space which is a collective space which we can develop that infrastructure.
Yeah.
So indeed, and then there was a trust issue, because people are contributing, even the ones who had bigger parcels of land. You give up that 20%, it was allocated to some individuals. And legally, actually, if you don't use it for the purpose you took it for, like if you people donated their land to build a nursery school, that land should revert to the person who donated it in the first place. So if it's allocated for commercial purposes, that is wrong. The initial owner can actually go to a court of law and demand to get that land back, because the purpose for which he donated it was not the purpose it has been put into.
All right, Joachim, as far as planning goes now, in this Nairobi, we have seen cases where you have your private house and someone comes and builds an apartment right next to it. You have no access to sunlight. They're trashing your compound. What is the recourse for that? Who do we blame for that? Is it you for not moving, or is it the person that builds next to you?
Well, cities are very dynamic. When most of those neighborhoods were planned, You know, it was in the early 70s, early 80s, and there was a very good, especially for those neighborhoods that had been planned, the former colonial ones, had a very good neighborhood setup. Some of them have maintained, so like the currents have really stuck to almost the same character. But look at our rate of urbanization. People are coming, there's demand.
Yeah.
As Prof said, we're in a capitalistic market. So if you're not able to enforce plans, enhance plans, so that they meet, the plan regime is 10 years now, to just handle the dynamism in cities. We need to be looking in this neighborhood that we had planned to be a low density residential. How is it happening? And it's also affecting even some of the upcoming cities like Tatu City. You'll get it was planned as a low density residential area, but there's suddenly now changed to more affordable and higher density because that's what the market demands. But for the public good, the government and planning is an equalizer to provide for public good, even as it supports private sector investment and growth.
All right, Prof, I just want to get your sentiments on what is the checklist like for you to come up and say, now this is a well thought out estate, this is a well planned estate or investment. What is the checklist that we need to look at going forward?
I think we move away from the modernist checklist, which was very segregated, functional segregation. So you had residential areas, they were purely residential, industrial areas were purely industrial, and then schools were also separate from the residential areas. What we need now is mixed use, to move towards a more mixed use paradigm. Mm-hmm. So living, working, and recreation have to be in the same place, and services. So in better planned jurisdictions, better planned countries, you'll find they live and enforce the requirement that your child should not go beyond a certain radius from where you live.
Yeah.
But in Nairobi, if you wake up at 4 o'clock, you'll find kids waiting for buses to be transported 20 kilometers away from where they live. Mm-hmm. And now in the evening when they are coming back, they'll come through traffic jam and travel for 2 hours. Small babies, while they should be spending that time either sleeping or having some siesta or playing or doing their homework or simply growing up as kids. So I think the checklist for a well-planned center is one that integrates all functions together so that people don't move away too far away from where they live, and they don't work too far away from where they live, and their children don't go too far away from where their homes are. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that would mean that the neighborhood will be more walkable. Our cities will be more walkable because if I don't need to drive far to go to work. If my workplace is just next to where I live, we become reliant on non-motorized transport, which is a more sustainable mode of moving people around the city.
All right, Joachim, sustainability is now a big conversation. People are moving away from the brick and mortar. They want to live in a sustainable environment and to live in a more eco-friendly environment where, when you look at Kenya and when you look at the number of people that are living in the informal sector, how far are we from that? And what needs to happen for us to be able to now start prioritizing sustainability?
Yeah, well, so sustainability is looking at, meeting the needs of the current while securing those of the future.
Yeah.
The current situation as it is, especially in informal settlements, is not really sustainable. We are all the way into the riparian reserves. We are clammed up in the valleys and places that people should not live. But I want to say the innovation that is also there, especially in the informal settlements. In fact, the market that is also there in the informal settlement can give us solutions. We've seen lower cost materials coming from informal settlements. We've seen some of these informal settlements communities coming together and jointly, and we have I know several examples where they came together and put the land that's available and said, let's just plan this to be livable and we take sharing it. So there is opportunity because the opportunity is that the informal settlement dwellers have the solutions.
Yeah.
Have the solutions. They're just not being involved. They're just not being asked, they're not being consulted, they're not being engaged. But we have solutions and that are workable. Some of this might not just be putting up residential units. It just might be providing facilities and spaces, and you create a more livable space in that regard.
All right, again, Prof, we're talking about affordable housing. We're talking about making sure that we get rid of these slums, these informal settlements. Now, from where you sit, how do we rope in the private sector? What needs to go right? One of the things that the private sector has normally complained about is we need an enabling environment. What would that enabling environment be for someone like you when you look in terms of planning? What kind of measures need to be put in place to make sure that there's an enabling environment, to make sure that the private sector feels safe even investing in housing?
I first want to start by saying that our private sector is very vibrant, our real estate private sector. There's actually a lot of people who are actually developing low-cost housing in our secondary cities and even in Nairobi itself. So we can actually rely on our private sector to do so. Now, the traditional role of government is to be a facilitator, an enabler, as you put it. And how does government enable? They take on the larger costs. Building a sewage system is an extremely costly venture, which the private sector cannot do.
All right.
Because they can't afford. But government can do the huge sewer network of the city. Now, the reason why we do plans is so that we leave out these areas where government is supposed to come in and invest in. So like we give road reserves so that government can build a road there, government can align sewer networks, government can put electricity, okay? So part of the land, that the 20% that we keep talking about, it's actually not 20%. Infrastructure accounts for 60% of the land in any neighborhood. And that amount of land is turned over to government to facilitate that development. So I think the cost of credit, for instance, is an extremely prohibitive environment. So private sector cannot go to banks to borrow at current prevailing interest rates, which at some point they were even 20%.
All right. Prof, unfortunately, we've run out of time. So I just want to get your parting shots in terms of when you talk about this conference, what should we expect in about 30 seconds each?
All right. So we expect a call to action where our policymakers, our decision makers, our community interest groups will have a conversation on what to do to have inclusive and sustainable urbanization in Kenya. We have no time. As Prof said, we are 60 years late. We have one unique opportunity to do this. And by that, we want to prioritize participatory planning and plan implementation. That is one of the expectations we want to have. We want to enhance governance and management of cities, municipalities, towns, and markets, which is provided in law, and have them with proper delegated functions, resources, assets, and especially professional capacity to be able to undertake a very important role of development control, enforcement of and implementation of the plans.
All right, Prof, parting shots.
So as I said, the future is urban, but I also want to say the future is here. It's a call to action, but mostly the call to action is for county governments to allocate funds for urban development and for them to engage the private sector and work together with the private sector to achieve sustainable development goals.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for making time for us. And of course, to our viewers, thank you for staying with us and following this conversation through. Of course, it's not a conversation that ends here. You can continue sending in your comments and what more you would want covered during this forum. But for now, that's how we wrap it this evening. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jimmy Mbogo.